exciting.
All right, people, I guess we'll start for today. We've got a lot to talk about, as usual. The top news we've picked is more good news from Moderna about their COVID vaccine. It's apparently 100% against severe COVID. For the coronavirus story itself, vaccinations are to begin this month. And the Mexican government has bought 34 million doses from Pfizer. In technology, the question, who's to blame when a self-governing car has an accident? In materials, the addition of 0.03% graphene powder increases the strength of concrete by 25%. This can reduce CO2 for the planet by about 2%. It's a big reduction from a small addition. In space, China's ambitions there is to have a robot on Mars, a human on the month, and I guess the question is, has China now replaced Russia? In environment, Singapore becomes the first country to approve sales of lab-created meat. In biology, artificial intelligence has cracked a protein folding problem that has stumped biologists for 50 years. And this will help us understand disease and discover new drugs. On us, apparently there's a drug that reverses age-related mental decline within days. Most studies shows this to perhaps the key to aging. Now here's one that really surprised me. In health, apparently glucosamine can reduce overall death rates as effectively as regular exercise. And it does it a huge amount. So that's what we'll talk about today. And so to start it all off, Richard, what's the more good news from Moderna about their COVID-19 vaccine?
Well, the vaccine stories are coming fast and furious now. There are 7 major vaccines that are well along in their phase 3 testing. And Moderna, of course, is one of the ones that leads the pack. And they have added to their announcement that they made about a week ago, which said that it had a 94.1 efficacy in preventing COVID. And in the details, they said that in their 15,000 people that they gave the virus to, there were 0 cases of severe disease and 0 deaths, as opposed to 30 severe cases of the control group and 1 death. And so 100% effective against severe COVID sounds pretty good to me. And the details also showed no serious safety concerns identified to date, and that the efficacy was consistent across age, race, and ethnicity and gender demographics. So it's good for old people, it's good for young people, etc. And then they have, they're planning they're going to deliver 20 million doses in before the year is out in the next 2 weeks, and then they're prepared to deliver 500 million to 1 billion doses next year. And that's fairly impressive. If you look at it, there are actually more things that are impressive. You know, they developed this vaccine in January, basically a week after the Chinese released the DNA of the virus. So that's how long it took them to do it. And then it took them since January almost a year to get through the testing regime. So that shows you how it is. The development cycle was remarkably quick. And then their going into production has been helped by some federal money from the USA. And in May, investors also contributed $1.3 billion to ramp up their production. I don't want to make you nervous about it, but Moderna has no products on the market so far. That is zero products, zero vaccines, and they're going from that to being the one of the leading candidates for the COVID virus. And they can do it because of the new science that they use, and the new science gave them the vaccine in a week. It just took a year to go through the way that we test it so that they could start releasing it and saving people. If you look at it, you could argue that maybe the approach is not so good, the safety approach, because after all, in the year that it took them to do it, in the US alone, 250,000 people died. Anyway, that's it for today.
Any comments?
The only comment is that the vaccine was developed using computers. It wasn't developed like the normal way vaccines are developed, by taking little piece of the virus protein, putting it in an egg and all that stuff.
Yes.
They basically took the genome of the virus and they modified it completely on the computer, and they used the latest technology called CRISPR to splice in the right elements to make it happen all on the computer. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yes, it is.
It's amazing. And this is the result of our scientific capability now. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing is, the other vaccine that was developed similarly was the Pfizer BioNTech.
Yes.
And they started injecting people with that vaccine in England. The UK approved it 2 days ago, I think.
Yes.
So the very first person was the first group of senior citizens in nursing homes were injected with that vaccine yesterday and today. And the first patient, interestingly, his name is William Shakespeare and is 91 years old. So there's already some comedians in the UK who are writing little skits on it, and two of them I thought was very funny. One is called The Taming of the Flu. And the other one is The Two Gentlemen of Corona. I thought you would get a laugh out of that. So that's all I was saying.
Does anyone know, like, can you read up and see what are the side effects of any of these things?
Yeah,
You
they have tested it on people and there's been no side effects. That's one of the reasons there's a lot of confidence, and that's why the British approved it, and the Americans are about to approve it this week. I think on Thursday they FDA is going to approve it.
Turn it down, you know?
Yeah.
Leaving my portion.
Okay.
I can hear it out in the kitchen.
Okay. You're interfering with the meeting.
And again, the on the Moderna, the report that they released for their phase 3 testing was, quote, no serious safety concerns identified to date. And that's as much as you're ever going to get a story like that to say no side effects.
Okay.
My comments.
Any comment?
Yeah, my comments about the vaccines is we have done so well, a 5-year job in 10 months. We have come up, the danger is that it's going to make us complacent. I mean, when you think that a lot of the people who have died were in long-term care and very close to death anyway, that, you know, it's quite astounding how we've been able to beat the virus. And, you know, we just better not be complacent.
Hear, hear.
Moving on to other coronavirus stuff. Apparently, we're going to get vaccinations this month from Pfizer in Mexico. Any comment on that?
Well, here we are. This is another part of this amazing rollout that is going on. Mexico, which some of us think is kind of behind the world on some of these things, then Mexico is bought 34 million doses from Pfizer, and their 250,000 doses are going to be delivered this month, and they're going to start vaccination. Now, this vaccine requires 2 injections, so the 250,000 doses that we have this month will immunize only half of that, 125,000 people, but that's still amazing. And, you know, Mexico has shown actual aggressive leadership there, and they've bought enough of this virus then to immunize 17 million people, and they've got other vaccines that Mexico has bought. So here, come on, Mexico, hooray, when does it get to the old people?
I thought you said you were going to get the Sputnik one.
That we got that one
you said you
too,
were gonna
but
get
this one's coming first, and it's been tested.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So Richard, where did you get this information that that batch will be split in half to be the first and second dose? It's not the way I understand it.
This information has been public for several weeks. So it's 2-dose. Both of the early ones, the Moderna and the Pfizer, are both 2-dose vaccines.
Well, that part I know, but I mean, the second shot will be coming in. I thought, you know, another batch, and not the one batch that is split in 2.
Oh.
And you don't know that, right?
Anyway, that's the way the testing was, and the testing looks very good.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Any other comments?
Yeah, just one comment. President Trump might complicate this picture a little bit. Yesterday, I saw in the news here in the US that he's going to issue an executive order saying that vaccines should be first used only on Americans because it's America first. And because the US government didn't buy that many vaccines early on because of the risk, they sold it to foreign governments, including the Europeans and Mexico and other places. But now Trump is saying that, well, unless all Americans are vaccinated, he's not going to allow exportation of this stuff. So he's getting ready to issue an executive order prohibiting all exports for the time being. So this might end up in court because the companies have contractual obligations to deliver it to foreign customers.
It will end up in court, and if he does keep that executive order, it will be rescinded on January 21st.
That's correct.
That will be one of the ones that Biden's rescinds immediately. They have a list of hundreds of these executive orders that they will eliminate immediately.
Correct.
Any other comments?
You got me stirred up, VJ, about Trump. I've been
Oh, I'm
clean.
sorry about that.
I've been clean for a week, and you got me stirred up again. Anyway, excuse me.
Canada is in the same situation as Mexico. They're getting 250,000 doses of Pfizer vaccine by the end of the month, and they have also ordered from many different sources, which will all be coming on stream together next year. So it looks like Canada and America and Mexico have almost been colluding.
I hope so. You know, it looks like one of
Yeah.
the problems that
Yeah.
we will have will be the consideration of what is the virus that is available, and will there be these different viruses available here at the same time, and how do we choose, and issues like that. So this vaccine story isn't over yet.
And another real complication is what we have now is countries vying with other countries. An awful lot of countries don't have easy access, and it's really not fair.
Oh,
Honey, tie him up.
Yeah.
Well, because the neighbors are outside.
And guess who instigated that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did.
Yeah. So moving on to technology, and the question is, who's to blame when a self-driving car has an accident? Richard.
Well, this is going to be one of the problems with this technology. You know, self-driving cars are programmed to identify and avoid risk, and can do that faster than human beings. But this technology is complicated, and it doesn't work 100% of the time. And in case of accident, who is legally responsible is the question. And what I see is that everybody's trying to point the finger at somebody else. It looks like the automobile manufacturers who offer this will do something like, the system will have a screen in the computer, like a lot of things do now, and before it'll let you use it, probably they will have you sign one of those end user agreements that we see all the time on all of this software before they'll turn it on, and the companies think that'll protect them. But nobody reads these agreements, and the courts know that nobody reads these agreements, and it's probable that this is not going to avoid responsibility for the company in case their system kills family and children and old people and stuff. And it's going to be a mess. And they say driver training this is kind of funny, but they say we may have to have driver training for self-driving cars. And as I say, it's going to be a mess, and nobody knows actually how this is going to shake out. And I know I would hate to be the first person in one of these lawsuits.
Lots more work for the lawyers.
Don't you think, Richard, that they will try and solve this problem before it becomes a problem by having, consecutive videotape connected to the various cameras that are around the vehicle? I see an advertisement quite often where somebody is backing out of his driveway, and then the car automatically comes to an abrupt stop because a big truck happens to come by. And he go on, he would have been pulverized. And I mean, this would have been, it seems to me, the kind of logical thing that truckers would do, trucking companies, to protect themselves. And so they will have videotape showing whatever happened if there would be an accident.
There are places where these autonomous vehicles already are legal, like Texas, and part of the requirement that made them legal was the requirement for video recording systems in the cars.
Yeah, right.
But
Well,
the
you can
video
quote-
recording system, I think, will just be the beginning of the court fight.
there's always going to be court fights, but look at the airbag, which has saved so many lives.
Yes.
But once in a while it fails, and this probably will save a lot of lives because the smart car is smarter than the average driver. But the lawyers are still going to be there.
Yes,
There's
I
money
think you're right.
Yeah.
Well, computers is my profession. And when it comes, and I try to kind of keep up to date. Of course, I'm not really, I don't really manage it, but I don't see how you can have driverless cars coping with something like, the Alamo when you go into Guadalajara, and there's like about 7 or 8 roads intersecting, and the traffic is absolutely horrendous at any time of the day. I don't think you can solve that kind of problem with a computer. It's just, I know that you could have cars going along the freeway and things like that. That's no problem. But I don't know how you would establish precedents. I mean, what we all do, we kind of push in. We show a little determination and make the other guy give way and things like that. And, you can't program that kind of stuff.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I was going to say this in response. And you say you can, and Richard would probably know that better than I. And all that means that it'll take a little longer to figure that one out.
Well, there's already one precedent for this. Last year in, I don't know, it's San Diego or Texas, a test car for Tesla. I think it was Tesla or a Google car, I forget. But it was being tested on the highway, and Tesla, and the car ran through there was a white truck that went across it, and the computer saw the white, and it blurred with the background of the sky, and it just didn't see the truck, and the driver was not paying attention, and he was killed in that accident. So I don't know how the court decided liability on that one, but it's already happened once.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, then moving along, graphene, as we've said so many times, is just a wonderful material, and a tiny, tiny bit of powder increases the strength of concrete by 25%, thus be able to reduce carbon dioxide from the planet. So a big reduction from a small addition, what's that about?
Now, in the world of materials, then graphene is gotten so much interest. And, when I think about graphene, I think about this super flat, one-dimensional material. And it's hard for me to understand how you can use that to help construct buildings, because buildings, I think, are not one-dimensional. And it turns out, this is a fairly substantial problem. there are countries around the world that are making real commitments to reduce their CO2 emissions, and about 10% of the CO2 emissions come from construction, from building, and that's a sizable piece. And so they're looking to see what they can do with graphene that might help. And one of the things that stands out is this very small addition of graphene into concrete, increasing its strength by 25%. That means that you can build these concrete buildings with less concrete. Building it with less concrete means less pollution. And if all the concrete were made with this graphene, then overall the world would reduce our CO2 emissions by about 2%. That's a small number, but when you're trying to do things that we are doing around the world, every 2% is significant. And then they're also looking at the use of graphene in other ways. One of the things is graphene is a good electrical conductor. And so they're thinking if they can embed graphene into building materials, then this can speed up the introduction of the smart building systems that also reduce energy use and things like this. They're thinking that if they can use graphene and embed it into road surfaces, that with this they can create charging structures for the electronic vehicles, and you can have them charge from the road they're driving on or the parking lot they're in, for example, by embedding this graphene in the pavement before it starts and building the infrastructure in to be able to distribute the power. Another thing they can think that graphene can do in these smart buildings and smart roads and all of these systems, they're going to require on sensors. And it turns out graphene is tremendous for building these sensors that uh, help everything become smarter and more efficient. So it looks like this uh, two-dimensional material is going to help us build three-dimensional buildings that are energy efficient.
Any comments? Richard, I don't understand how something that's two-dimensional can actually be a powder.
I don't know either. You break it up, they're at graphene at one level. What I don't understand about it is one form of graphene that is popular are these graphene nanotubes, and I can understand how they might help add strength to structure. And I wonder actually if it was carbon nanotubes that they were talking about. Those are made out of graphene, and maybe they just glossed over that detail.
Where do you get graphene from? What is graphene?
Graphene is carbon. Heard of carbon? Carbon is this neat chemical that will form 6 electrical bonds with other things, and you put a bunch of carbon together and they make these hexagons of carbon that are kind of like the pattern of a chain link fence. And so it's a bunch of carbons that are just together in a sheet that are linked by these 6 the hexagons
Okay,
that carbon naturally makes.
I
So
got it.
it's just hexagons going sideways till infinity.
Any other comments? Okay, then moving on to space. Now, what's this about China's ambitions? What's this about a robot on Mars, human on the moon? And is China taking over everybody else, like, for example, Russia?
Well, I killed my PowerPoint, so I will just go. Oh, here it is. Okay, no, it isn't. My computer has a user problem. Excuse me. Okay, that looks like it to me. Anyway, the uh, Chinese got started in space kind of late. It looks like uh, the first Chinese astronaut in space was just in 2003, barely 20, less than 20 years ago. In 2011, they put up a orbiting space laboratory like the U.S. and the rest of the world has. They wanted to have their own because they're trying to do that. And the Chinese started off as way behind uh, Russia and the US, but they are busy catching up. They're doing a lot of their development of this program as a part, really, of their weapons system, and they have money to spend on weapons. And if you look at it now, the Chinese now uh, are sending material back from the moon. That hasn't happened since the 1970s. So they have a successful mission. It looks like doing something we haven't done in 50 years. The Chinese also have a rover that is going to the moon. The Chinese also has an orbital plane like the US and Russians used to have that has been successfully tested. And the Chinese really in the last few years have gone from kind of nowhere on the list in the space race to, I think they now are number two. The Russians are not continuing to make the massive investment that they made during the years of the Cold War. They just don't have the money to do it and they can't continue to support it. And so it looks like the leaders in space now will be the US and China. So watch out.
Any comments?
I just mentioned that the Chinese landed on the moon about a week ago.
Yes.
And they had a robot that actually drilled in and took rocks and put
Yes.
it back in, and I think it's flying back or about to fly
It's on
back.
its way back.
Ship, and it's coming back to the Earth in a week or two. So they'll be only the second country, I think, to have rocks, the samples of the soil. And this is the drills went in like 4 feet into the moon. So they're getting the material from quite under the surface. So it might shed new light on the structure of the moon and the solar system and things like that. And they're committed to sharing it with the rest of the world. So let's see how that works out. But
well, also the Chinese, when they're doing this, as we talked about last week, there will soon be a race to mine the moon and trying to figure out what are the areas you need to mine and who owns the moon and all of that stuff. And the Chinese are busy trying to be a leader of the pack. Now, this Japanese mission to an asteroid also came back in the last week. It dropped a capsule somewhere in Australia and they found it. And so there are two big missions that are going on right now about materials from off the planet. Clive tried to say something, but you're muted, maybe. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I was I was responding to my wife. She's at the other side of the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say hello to Bev.
Hi, Bev.
Hello, Bev.
Any other comments on China and space?
Well, China is building a space station as well. I think they're going to be launching it in a
Yes.
year or two.
Yes.
It's going to compete with the International Space Station.
Right, and they plan to have that up and fully functional in 2 years.
Okay, then moving on to the environment. We talked before about lab-created meat. And now Singapore becomes the first country to approve sales of it. Tell us about that and why it's important.
Well, the first part of why it's important is that this is a new way to feed ourselves on this planet. There already were successful experiments making lab-grown meat in space, because if you're an astronaut, there's not much room to graze cows in space. And it turns out in Singapore has a similar problem that you do in space, which is not much room to grow anything. And Singapore has a long-term commitment. Right now, they grow only about 10% of their food, and they have a significant goal to grow 30% of their food. And it's hard to grow a lot of food if you don't have land. So to me, it seems perfect that they would be the first one out of the pack to do this lab grown meat. And it's kind of interesting, I think, also because there's a technology story here. The company whose meat they're going to be eating, the name of it is Eat Just, as in justice, I think, Inc. And they are a maker of meat and egg substitutes. And they are actually a Silicon Valley startup. They're a startup in San Francisco, and it shows how the Silicon Valley has gone from electronics to biology and still being able to be successful with these startups with new technology. And the product is created from animal cells without the slaughter of any chickens, so we have no cruelty chicken. And it turns out part of the thing about Singapore is it's a very good place for this kind of production release because Singapore, this is a quote from the CEO of Just Meat. He says, quote, they're just really forward thinking and building an enabling environment for this kind of work. And they are planning to have Singapore to be the focus of their manufacturing activities. So Just Meat is going into Singapore in a big way, and Singapore is playing along because of their interest in broad food security. And they say initially the chicken product, which tastes just like chicken, will be priced similarly to premium chicken. And they say, quote, eventually we want to get to the place where it's significantly more cost effective than conventional production. And that's my prediction. If you look at this stuff, the lab grown meat uses something like 1/10 of the energy and the water and the resources that meat that is grown the old-fashioned way does. And in the long term, the thing that wins is the thing that is the most efficient, low-cost means of production. And so they're planning to do this with chicken. Singapore, by the way, and this company will be next going into ground beef. And so that will be the next product that is rolled out in Singapore.
Any comments?
Well, I think it's going to happen. I mean, I can remember when people fed their pets table scraps or things from the butcher, and now everybody feeds their pets the stuff they call kibble, which I believe is produced from anything but other animals. And so, yeah, but it's taking a long time, and I hope it comes sooner, because my grandchildren are vegetarian and think I'm terrible because I eat meat, and I thrive on meat. I've just been doing the keto diet, you know. But they want to make sure that it tastes really good before they introduce it, because, you know, people have got to be convinced.
And in the beginning, it'll be because it's a novelty. But I
Yeah.
think in the end, the fact that it's the lowest cost way to produce it will, and that means it'll be lower cost, lower price than the competitive products. That's going to make it a winner.
Yeah.
In addition to that, a huge proportion of the arable land on Earth is taken up with animals that we use farming and that kind of stuff, whether it's livestock or chicken. A huge amount of our land is used up for that, and a huge amount of climate change is due to that. And if we could do something like this that would use far less land and be far less putting stuff into the atmosphere, it's extremely important.
And, you know, to follow up with what Fred said, one of the things that we know is an easy solution to help us with climate change is to plant more trees. And it turns out that one of the places we need to plant them are all of these fields that are used to raise beef and to raise the food that feed the beef. And if we could just replace that, we would have enough land left that would give us half the land we need to plant the trillion trees.
Richard, is there any information on cholesterol on these artificial meat products?
That's just, it's meat. The content is the same. The cholesterol would be probably lower than it would be for a cut when you get it from the supermarket, because it doesn't have the fat in it. Cholesterol, the stuff that I'm reading suggests strongly that the cholesterol problem likely is from carbohydrates, not from meat.
You know, one comment I had was, I hope they concentrate on pork, because the Chinese, they eat the world's largest amount of pork. I think they eat more pork than the rest of the world combined, by a multiple. And the pork is having a devastating impact on the environment, and it's mainly because of the Chinese consumption. So if they can come up with this new kind of pork without raising pigs, then I think that'll be a big help too.
And I think they will do it. Right now, I know the stuff that I know about personally includes beef, chicken, and fish. And if you can do it with that range of different protein foods, pork is just a minor difference.
Right.
I think that's a good point.
Okay, moving on to biology. What's this about a protein folding problem that stumped us for so long that AI has cracked and can help us better understand disease and get better drugs?
Well, this, excuse me, I got the wrong slide. Okay, I got the wrong slide again. Who knows? Again, I wish my computer didn't have as many operator problems. Okay, there we are. There we are. So the protein folding has been in concern for biologists for a very long time. And the reason why is if you look at proteins, it's really an individual protein is almost like a string of beads. And uh, the protein in its real form in living matter is folded in particular ways that give it a shape. And the shape that it has is the thing that determines what it does. So the shape is kind of significant there. And if you're trying to do something like make an antibiotic, you need to know more about than just what is the protein. You need to know how it folds together so you can look at its physical structure and make something that will attach to it, for example. So it's a very significant issue within biology and within the kind of artificial biology that we're working on now. And uh, you've heard about the AI systems like that Google had that were able to beat the world's best players at Go. And Google has turned that effort into its own company that they call DeepMind. And uh, DeepMind now has a new AI system that it calls AlphaFold, and it is a thing that has, they think, pretty much solved the protein folding problem. For example, there's a competition that goes on every other year uh, that is called the Critical Assessment of Structure Prediction, which is not a name that rolls off your tongue. And they have a conference, which is basically a fancy science contest for grown-ups. And uh, this year, AlphaFold product was able to predict with great speed and accuracy this protein folding and was able to demonstrate that it did it well enough that people are saying this is a big deal. In some sense, we have solved the protein folding problem. And again, this is going to speed up development of things like new drugs. And as an example of the speed, here's a specific case. There is a evolutionary biologist who was working at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, and he spent 10 years 10 years trying to figure out the shape of one protein and was not able to do it. And then they tried this program out in AlphaFold and they gave the answer in half an hour.
Whoa.
So I think this will make biology move a lot faster. And anyway, it's an amazing uh, thing from AI, and this AI system is doing something that no human being is able to do.
Any comments?
Think the thing about AI, you know, being able to do things that no human can do, that is kind of mind blowing, and that makes you think, where the heck are we going? You know, it's scary.
Yes. Now, one of the things that I read 2 or 3 years ago was there is a prediction that in about 10 years, for about $1,000, you know, the price of an old desktop computer, that you would be able to buy a box that had the capabilities of one human brain, and that in another 10 years, you would be able to buy a box for the same $1,000 that had the capability of all the human brains on the planet. And it's hard for me to know where it's going. If that is the trajectory we have ahead of us in the next 20 years, it's to say it's inconceivable is an understatement.
Yeah, you know, I read somewhere that the scanning of MRI scans for cancer and stuff, the radiologists, it is still a guesswork, and they can't sometimes see the patterns to identify whether it's cancerous or not very accurately. And AI has done better than most radiologists.
Yes, yes. That's
Yeah.
that's one of the
AI
things.
doesn't take any coffee breaks.
I don't think there's much copyright protection on the AI, but the companies do protect their investment.
Yeah.
Another thing with AI is that the amount of effort that goes into training these enormous systems is literally amazing. The increase in energy that it takes, as one example, to train a contemporary one of these big AI systems has increased like a factor of 100,000 in the last 3 years. And that's an enormous increase. And so these are, again, systems that a lot of them is hard for us to understand. They also, to me, point out that the technology we use to make these things is still so primitive. Because if you look at the human brain uses about 10 watts of power. And you would have to say it seems pretty capable.
Well, Richard, moving along, what's this about that we now maybe have the key to aging with this drug that can reverse age-related mental decline within days? What's that?
It's another thing that can be a big deal. This is a drug, ISRIB, that they discovered a few years ago. And what they found out initially was that they could use this drug with people, for example, who had had traumatic brain injury, or excuse me, with mice that have had traumatic brain injury. I leaped ahead and gave evidence that we didn't have yet, but mice with traumatic brain injury, and they could see after applying this drug, they could see the next day that this traumatic brain injury had gone away. So that's kind of a deal. They also have seen it with other cases. And then it was so successful. What they are doing, let me find the right part of the article. What the drug does is it enables the cellular protein production machinery. It kind of reboots it. And after there's a traumatic injury, this protein production machinery, there's a kind of biological safety valve. And in the case of this traumatic injury, it turns the protein production off, and this drug turns it back on. And it so they thought, hey, if it does this with injuries, uh, one of the things that it shows is that uh, this memory loss that is happens like to people that we thought was just the way it is, it turns out it maybe is reversible, and that the memory loss actually represents a physiological problem where your protein production machinery isn't working right. So if they thought, hey, if it's like this, maybe we can do it with aging as well. And they were able to find out that, in fact, this does uh, reverse the at least some of the aging processes in the brain, like in the hippocampus, which they studied well. This is a brain region that has a key role in learning and memory. And just one day after giving animals a single dose of this drug, they found that the signatures of this neuronal aging disappeared. And so this is a big deal. They have to use it, go through human testing, of course, and they think that following is a list of conditions besides aging that they think this drug will help with. Uh, Dementia, Alzheimer's, ALS, cognitive decline, multiple sclerosis, traumatic brain injury, Parkinson's disease, Down syndrome, and some others. So that's a fairly significant list. I have somebody I'm close to who has had Parkinson's disease for 20 years, and I just sent him that article and said, find it and start taking it now. And this provides a kind of hope for disease, and also a kind of hope for us old people whose brains have been deteriorating since we're 40. So
Any comment?
Well, when they start selling it at the pharmacy on the carretera, please let me know.
I will. After I get my supply. I haven't looked on Amazon to see if I can find it.
Any other thoughts? Okay, then moving on. What's this about glucosamine? I thought it was for exercise pain, and now this says you don't even need to exercise if you take glucosamine. You'll never die if you take it. What's that about?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Now, what you talk about, the people who did the research have said, don't stop going to the gym and just take glucosamine. We're not recommending that. They're saying we're not recommending that, but a population study of many thousands of people showed that participants that were taking glucosamine chondroitin, which is the thing that you're going to take if your knee is hurting and you're trying to ward off further knee problems, for example, like me, who'd been taking it for the last 10 years. And they found out that people who were taking it every day for a year or longer were associated with a 39% reduction in all-cause mortality. So a 39% reduction in death, which is not bad, and also a 65% reduction in cardiovascular related deaths. So it cut heart deaths by 2/3. And so you should check your supplements, and maybe glucosamine is something you should take. The guy who was in charge of the study says that he takes it anyway because he's got knee problems and he doesn't want to hurt. And besides hurting, it can avoid the other problem, which is I think one of the names for it is premature death.
Any comment?
Well, I didn't know that about glucosamine, but I've been taking it for about at least 20 years, if not longer.
And you haven't died yet.
And every day I take it, I'm still alive.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Anything else?
Again, for me, it's amazing to hear about some of these things that are supplements that many of us take every day that may give us protections that we had never imagined.
Yeah.
I
Don't
believe,
wonder if it's maybe the marketing department that comes up with this thing.
This
Sell more.
was, yeah, this was a science guy, not a marketing department, so I believe it a little better, having been the marketing department.
Yeah.
I believe that the glucosamine is a natural product. It's not a mixture of different drugs and things. It's from the roots of a tree
Right.
or bush.
And so as a natural product, it has uses in the body that we probably don't know about yet. We're still just the beginning of learning how all of this stuff works.
Anything else? So I guess that's what we'll talk about today. And now, thank you, Richard, for a good session here, and we'll see you all in a week's time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take your glucosamine so you'll still be alive.
Yeah, right. Thanks,
Thank
Richard.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Adios.
Adios.